April 20th, 1945, the war maniac Adolf Hitler, amidst storm and chaos, welcomed his 56th birthday. At this moment, Hitler no longer had the ambition and confidence he once possessed in his early years. Under the joint assault of Allied forces from east and west, his Third Reich was like a giant battleship, riddled with holes, ready to sink at any moment in the raging battle. On April 20th, that very day, after greeting a group of Hitler youth at the entrance to the Chancellery bunker, Hitler slowly and shakily walked back into his underground shelter. This was the last time Hitler ever appeared in public. His back was hunched like a skeleton, his eyes vacant, his hands trembling uncontrollably. The arrogance and dominance of the past were gone. A few days later, Soviet troops entered Berlin. On April 30th, they captured the Reichstag. In this desperate situation, Hitler took his own life in the Chancellery bunker that same day. His dream of world domination was shattered forever. The Battle of Berlin was the final major battle on the European front of World War II. So, during this decisive confrontation, what preparations were made by both sides? And in the final moments of Hitler's life, what unknown events took place? In the autumn of 1943, after the Battle of Kursk, the Soviet Red Army seized the momentum, successfully driving German forces out of Soviet territory. After more than a year of grueling campaigns, they successively captured East Prussia, destroying Germany's eastern defenses, and driving a sharp dagger into Hitler's heart. Meanwhile, over 2 million Western Allied troops, under the command of General Eisenhower, advanced relentlessly, liberating Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and France, pressing directly toward Germany's homeland. In the Battle of the Bulge, they once again dealt a heavy blow to the Germans. By early 1945, the German army in the West had suffered nearly 1 million casualties, and its war machine in the East was running on empty. Despite this situation, the German high command still clung to illusions, hoping to rely on Berlin's fortifications to stage a desperate last stand. Berlin, a vast industrial metropolis, was the heart of Nazi Germany's war machine. Located in eastern Germany, the city covered an area of 892 square kilometers. Then, as now, it was Germany's most important political, economic, and industrial center. After losing East Prussia, Hitler chose to make a final stand in Berlin, intending to turn it into an impregnable fortress. Without question, whoever captured Berlin first would gain the highest honor of the war. However, due to the Yalta Agreement and overall military considerations, Supreme Allied Commander General Eisenhower, after careful deliberation, concluded that an assault on Berlin would cost at least 100,000 casualties. Therefore, he abandoned the plan to take Berlin, redirecting attacks toward Dresden, Erfurt, and Leipzig instead. By doing so, Eisenhower effectively handed Berlin over to the Soviets, Germany's most hated enemy. Of course, the political significance of capturing Berlin was enormous. Stalin was determined to seize the city first. To prepare for this massive operation, the Soviets assembled 3 fronts, army groups, with a total of about 2.5 million soldiers, over 14,000 artillery pieces, more than 1,500 tanks and self-propelled guns, and about 2,400 aircraft. They were commanded respectively by Marshals Zhukov, Konev, and Rokossovsky, the Iron Triangle of the Soviet Army during World War II, the 3 war horses of the Red Army's battlefield. Nevertheless, capturing Berlin was no easy task. Hitler still held more than 800,000 elite German troops in his command. Berlin and its surrounding areas had been meticulously fortified over the years by the Wehrmacht. Many solid fortifications and tight defensive positions had been built. In order to defend Berlin, Hitler at that time had almost gone insane. He reorganized a new army, recruiting boys as young as 13 and men as old as 60. All drafted into the newly formed Volkssturm, People's Militia. Those who refused to serve were executed. since most able-bodied men were already serving in the Wehrmacht. Among the 6 million members of the Volkssturm, the majority were either children or the elderly, only suitable for guard duties. Although the manpower had been greatly increased, resources in Berlin at that time were already extremely scarce. In the newly formed Volkssturm, some units were issued only a single shovel as a means of self-defense. Moreover, these people received only 48 hours of crash training, covering basic rifle shooting, anti-tank weapons, and grenade usage. Countless Berliners without combat experience thus became sacrifices to Hitler's stubborn resistance. On April 20, 1945, the fourth day of the Battle of Berlin, though the Germans had resisted fiercely for days, their Oder defense line was finally crushed by the Soviets. The Red Army advanced to the Oder River, only 60 kilometers from Berlin. Pursuers in front, blockades behind. The once mighty German forces across Europe were now surrounded, on the verge of collapse. Many people in Berlin began discussing how to kill themselves more painlessly. With a gun, a knife, or poison. Doctors became frequent targets of consultation. Propaganda minister Goebbels tried to restore confidence, claiming that victory was just around the corner. But in the face of hard reality, all propaganda lost its charm, appearing only absurd and laughable. Except for Hitler's most devoted followers, no one believed Berlin could avoid collapse. Facing attacks from both east and west, cracks began to appear even within the Nazi leadership. Most high-ranking generals knew the end was near, and sought to abandon Hitler and find a way out. Hitler felt increasingly isolated and helpless. He once said, "Someday, I will have only 2 friends left, Miss Braun and my dog." As early as July 20, 1944, at the Wolf's Lair in Rastenburg, Hitler had narrowly escaped assassination. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, Chief of Staff of the Reserve Army, used a meeting as cover to place a time bomb under the conference table, attempting to kill Hitler. But Hitler miraculously survived, with only minor injuries. After the failed plot, Hitler executed a large number of senior officers, including Rommel and others. Those who had once fought and died for him were now gone. The internal rifts within Hitler's circle deepened. Goering, Goebbels, Speer, Himmler, and Bormann, all of them had conflicts and power struggles with Hitler himself. By now, the Nazi leadership was in chaos. On April 20, 1945, Hitler's 56th birthday, his foreign minister Ribbentrop had fled. His most trusted subordinates, Goering and Himmler, had also run away. If one image could summarize Hitler's final 10 days, it would be that of an underground bunker, surrounded by ruins, the smoke of battle still lingering above, while he sat below drinking wine, holding a final wedding, staging his own final curtain call. On the morning of April 20th, Hitler began his day as usual. First breakfast, then briefings, followed by his routine discussion with Goebbels. The wired communications were unstable, and all the news from outside was bad. What could he do now? If you're eating a meal and don't want to miss out on major or minor events, you can open the Kushui Music app, set a 30-minute timer, and during your meal, you can just finish listening to a recap of a classic battle. For those who want to learn more about historical events, you can download it too. I personally use it myself. The history section is full of solid content, deep analyses of imperial strategies, famous generals, and military tactics. For example, in this episode, we discuss the Battle of Berlin. By April 1945, Berlin had long lost its former glory. Every building was either a crater or a ruin. Smoke filled the air all day long. In Hitler's bunker, there was no day or night, only the endless sound of explosions, footsteps, and dry coughing. Facing battles on both the eastern and western fronts, the German Air Force was already exhausted, and ground forces were running out of ammunition. Amid this atmosphere of apocalypse, Hitler spent his 56th birthday inside the Führer bunker. There was no cake, no music, only wave after wave of Soviet shells, whistling overhead, as if congratulating him. Meanwhile, on the Western Front, the American and British Allied forces advanced at a speed of 50 to 80 kilometers per day, reaching the banks of the Elbe River, only about 100 kilometers from Germany's capital, Berlin. On April 25, part of the U.S. First Army's 69th Division met Soviet troops in the Torgau area, 120 kilometers south of Berlin, on the banks of the Elbe River. This meeting split the German defense forces into northern and southern groups. And from that moment, the eastern and western fronts of the anti-fascist alliance were united. At the same time, Soviet marshals Zhukov and Konev were leading their vanguard troops, already approaching the outskirts of Berlin. Soon, the skies over Berlin once again roared, with thousands of Soviet aircraft. Tens of thousands of tons of bombs and incendiaries rained down. On the ground, every kind of artillery opened fire, with nearly 1,000 guns deployed per mile. After the bombing and shelling ended, Soviet assault groups and battalions advanced into the city from all directions. Having been hardened by the Battle of Stalingrad, Soviet soldiers knew well how to capture a city. However, Berlin was heavily fortified by the Germans, its defenses complete and its resistance fierce. Thus, Soviet troops had to seize each building and street one by one. Every inch of progress came at a tremendous cost. As the fierce battle raged in Berlin, Hitler stayed curled up in his Führer bunker. For Hitler and his close circle, the outside world grew ever more distant. The atmosphere inside the bunker became increasingly oppressive. Knowing that defeat was inevitable, Hitler fell into deep despair and madness. He ranted hysterically, accusing the German people of betraying him. When Soviet forces reached Berlin's 9th district, the city's defense commander, Weidling, suggested that Hitler attempt to break out. But Hitler refused. He declared he would resist to the end. Just when everyone thought they could hold out a few more days, Hitler suddenly announced he would marry. He was to wed Eva Braun. On the night of the 28th, the Soviets launched a massive assault on the Reichstag. The Germans fought back desperately, with their last ounce of strength. The brutal fighting continued until late on the 30th. Then, on the afternoon of April 30th, 1945, in the dim bunker beneath the Chancellery, Hitler and his companion of 12 years, Eva Braun, held their wedding ceremony. There was no wedding dress, no band. Even the table and chairs were cobbled together from the map room. Goebbels was called in as witness, and someone recorded the attendance. It was a forced sense of ceremony, a final shred of dignity. A few hours later,